live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you with all the top news stories from around the globe. Let's get started with our big focus. Are you someone who has a sedentary and laid-back lifestyle? Feel too lazy to get out of bed every morning and hit the gym? Or go for a run? Prefer to take the elevator every time rather than climb a few flights of stairs? Well, then this story is for you. Half of all Indians are physically unfit. Yes, you heard that right. Half the adult Indian population does not meet the World Health Organization's guidelines on sufficient physical activity, according to new data published in the Lancet Global Health, the world's leading medical journal. Though women are doing somewhat better than men, more women, that's 57%, than men, 47%, are physically inactive. Most alarmingly, the prevalence of insufficient physical activity among Indian adults has risen sharply from 22.3% in 2000 to 49.4% in 2022. Why should you worry about this? Here's why. If this trend is left unchecked, 60% of India's population would be unfit by 2030 and at risk of disease from not doing enough physical activity, or to put it simply, from being physically unfit. So if you fall into this category, this is what you need to do. The WHO recommends at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate aerobic activity per week, or equivalent vigorous activity for all adults. Insufficient physical activity is defined as not doing 150 minutes of moderate intense activity, 75 minutes of vigorous intense activity, or an equivalent combination per week. According to the WHO, physical inactivity puts adults at greater risk of cardiovascular diseases such as heart attacks and strokes, type 2 diabetes, dementia, and cancers of the breast and the colon. Remember, India is the diabetes capital of the world, and obesity is closely linked to diabetes amongst other causative factors. India has the 12th highest prevalence of insufficient physical activity among 195 countries. 44 million women and 26 million men above the age of 20 in India were found to be obese in 2022. In fact, India could be facing an obesity epidemic, with alarm bells ringing particularly for the young. 12.5 million children in the country between the ages of 5 and 19 were grossly overweight when this study was done in 2022. 70% of India's urban population is classified as obese or overweight, placing the country amid an obesity crisis. Let's now look at the global picture. Worldwide, nearly one-third, that's 31% of adults, approximately 1.8 billion people on the planet, did not meet the recommended levels of physical activity. That means 1 in 8 people in the world were living with obesity. The WHO says this is because of many factors, including changes in work patterns, move towards more sedentary work, changes in the environment, convenient transportation modes, and changes in leisure time activities, meaning more screen-based sedentary activities. The highest rates of physical inactivity were observed in the high-income Asia-Pacific region, 48%, and South Asia, 45%, with levels of inactivity in other regions ranging from 28% in high-income Western countries to 14% in Oceania. Here's what is alarming about this. Indians are genetically more prone to developing non-communicable diseases like heart diseases and diabetes at least a decade earlier than others. Dr. K. Srinath Reddy, public health expert and top cardiologist, says lack of physical activity means you are just aggravating your existing risk factors. The WHO goals were set to reduce risk of heart diseases, diabetes, obesity, and some types of cancer, while improving mental health and a stronger immune system. But delayed urbanization and industrialization in some parts of the world have led to a sedentary and comfortable lifestyle, particularly South Asia, including India, he says. Fitness experts say you need at least some simple physical activity, such as going for a walk. This is particularly important for people with comorbidities such as diabetes. But those individuals should seek medical advice on the frequency, intensity, and type of physical activity that they should do based on their endurance levels. While Indian women may be doing marginally better, fact is, according to the Lancet study, Indian women are doing worse than women in neighboring Bangladesh, Bhutan and Nepal. Dr. Reddy says many Indian women wrongly believe that household chores are a good form of physical exercise. There are also cultural barriers in some cases. He says inactivity is most evident in middle-aged urban women. Others point out that a larger share of home duties combined with their caregiver role provide women less opportunities to prioritize themselves. The question we're asking on Global Lens tonight is this: are we taking our obesity crisis seriously enough? What are we doing to address the challenge posed by, well, half of Indians being physically unfit? How grave is the risk of this huge physically unfit population contracting diseases such as diabetes and heart ailments? Just what do we need to do to ensure our lack of physical fitness and the resultant diseases do not cause a major national health crisis? Perhaps the simple answer is get off that couch now and exercise. You will thank yourself later. All right, let's put those questions to our panel of experts. Joining me on the show tonight is Dr. Dheeraj Kol, clinical researcher and medical education expert. He joins us live from the US. Dr. Shubhda Bhanot, Chief Diabetes Educator at Max Healthcare, joins us live from Gurugram near Delhi. And in a moment, we're hoping to be joined by Dr. Rakesh Yadav, Professor of Cardiology at AIIMS, New Delhi. All right, Dr. Shubhda Bhanot, let me begin with you. Does it come as any surprise, this new Lancet study which says that half of Indians are physically unfit? As if it wasn't bad enough that we are the diabetes capital of the world, are we also on our way to becoming the obesity capital of the world? Though, yes, countries like the US are, shall I say, relatively worse off than us, but I'm not sure we can really draw much comfort from that.
See, actually, it does not come as a surprise. Every day in our clinical practice, when we talk about physical activity, we do listen to these practical things which have come out in Lance's study, that we don't have areas to do physical activity, we don't have time to do physical activity. This urbanization has changed the whole lifestyle that we Indians are leading. And especially post-COVID, this work from home culture has given a halt to the physical activity that people were actually doing. And getting back to a physical activity routine has become difficult for people. And this ordering food, sitting at home, eating at home, and not going out at all, working from home, not being able to adjust the work and life balance in India has become a real big problem. Though we see a lot of people going to the gym, but that's only a particular strata of people which is going. Even the low social economic group, if you see, are getting obese. They are getting physically unfit because the kind of labor that they used to do, they are not. Even if you see the maids that come to your house, they have become obese, which was not the case. So in India, the lack of physical activity is not a surprise. We are getting physically unfit, and we were already prone to obesity, especially the central obesity, the abdominal obesity. We Indians were prone. We were the thin, fat people. Even if you were thin, the visceral deposition, the visceral fat on the abdomen area was more. So with the lack of physical activity, this fat which is deposited on the abdomen is obviously more, and that leads to insulin resistance, and that leads to more complications of heart, of diabetes, and all the other non-communicable diseases. So no, it has not come as a surprise at all.
Not a surprise at all. And you are a diabetes specialist. In the next segment, we'd also like to discuss with you the link that exists between diabetes and obesity. We'll also go across to Dr. Dheeraj Kol and Dr. Rakesh Yadav, but after this quick break on Global Lens. Don't go anywhere.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए, और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है Money9। आजादी पैसे की। अभी डाउनलोड करें।
This is News9 Live, India's only digital exclusive live stream. For the early adopters, bringing you the news 24/7. For the smart audiences on the smartest TVs. News9 Live. Stream now on your smart TVs.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and we're discussing a new Lancet study that says half of Indians are physically unfit. What should we do about this health crisis, or at least a potential one? Let me now go across to Dr. Dheeraj Kaul. Dr. Kaul, you are in the United States. Correct me if I'm wrong, but where obesity is concerned, the United States seems to have a major problem on its hands. It's not as if obesity or, lack of physical fitness is a problem that is confined to India. It exists in the so-called first world as well, especially the United States, where it's almost considered an epidemic. But how would you compare, the situation that exists in India, especially going by the new figures that have emerged in this Lancet study, vis-a-vis what we've seen in the United States over the years? And also, if I may ask you this question, while, over the years we've blamed obesity and, our being overweight on our maybe obsession with junk food, fast food, this, that and the other, but do you believe that the COVID pandemic has really changed the rules of the game and significantly worsened the situation for all of us, given that, many began working from home, many continue to do so even now, and therefore we are perhaps leading more sedentary lives than ever before?
Good morning, good evening. Thank you for having me on the show. As you know, I'm a medical educator as well as I'm involved in clinical research, especially accessing data and involving AI in healthcare. My medical background is transplant nephrology and geriatrics. So this is an area very, very close to me because one of the most common complication of obesity, diabetes happens to be kidney disease. As a nephrologist, we see those patients. And then once your kidneys are failed, you're waiting on dialysis till you get a transplant. So I see the transplant patients as well. So I just gave you a summary, but absolutely you touched on two very, very important points. First of all, where do we see ourselves in US? I believe that's the question you were asking. Yes, US is like an epitome or epicenter of obesity. And obesity is one of the biggest, I would say, pandemic or globally actually because of lifestyle and the type of food we are eating, the physical activity, the preserved content of the food, which has led to a lot of cancer increase globally, as you know. So those are certain big issues which can be a discussion in itself. But coming to your question about it, yes, India is also on the same track. Obesity has significantly risen in India. Diabetes, India has become a diabetic capital of the world within last, I would say, 6 to 7 years, and we are watching these numbers very closely for at least a decade. And with each year, the prevalence of diabetes is going up in India. Inactivity, lifestyle inactivity, is one of the biggest component which contributes to insulin resistance, as we may say that insulin is there but it doesn't work. That's the most prevalent type of diabetes which is growing globally in the world, and one of the reasons for that is when you have a lot of fat tissue, it actually sends signals and makes the insulin, same amount of insulin, less sensitive for your body. So that means if you need 100, say, uh, uh, digits of insulin in layman's language to push the amount of sugar in the cells, if you become obese, now your insulin requirement may go 2x, 3x, or in certain cases even more. Maybe it will need 200. So it puts more stress on your pancreas and eventually pancreas fail Before that, you have insulin resistance, which is directly connected to what you're showing right now. I would like to emphasize on one point. Although being obese is really bad, you should try to reach your ideal body weight plus minus 10 to 15% above. Still, you're working on it. But truncal obesity, what you're showing, is one of the biggest silent killers out there. Because when you have fat deposit around your belly, a lot of cortisol, a lot of stress hormones are released. You age much faster. You have atherosclerosis, that means your blood vessel gets clogged much faster. You could be at age 40 and have a small heart attack, and you won't even realize it till you go to a cardiologist that you are having some degree of heart failure with small heart attacks. You can have brain fogginess, small strokes. You can lead to your kidney insufficiency. Your kidneys, we pick up patients who are relatively healthy, and they come to us with CKD stage 3. That means their kidney filtration fraction has dropped by 50%, and they didn't even realize. That's what most commonly patients come to nephrologists nowadays. So it's a very, very big problem. The other two issues in India is we are genetically predisposed to have diabetes, coronary artery disease. So coronary artery disease or cardiovascular disorder is number one killer in the world. But the fastest growing disease is diabetes. And once you hit diabetes, one of the first organ which gets involved is your eyes, followed by your kidneys, your heart, your stroke. So diabetes affects small blood vessels and big. It goes all over the body. So you can have damage in almost all the organs. You age much faster. And once the damage is done, it's very hard to reverse it. Although we have good medicines, but it's very hard to reverse it. Let me tell you that. Coming to your second question, I was extensively involved in COVID research, COVID global awareness. So you're absolutely right. Sedentary lifestyle has become a kind of a norm since COVID. People who were motivated to go to work now work from home, or half the days they are not going. So that transporting, running after the bus, or being active, climbing the stairs, that has gone down. Staying at home actually is not really good for your mental health as well. And physical activity is not only about somatic health, body health. It's very important for your mental health. It prevents you from dementia. Actually, studies have shown it prevents you from depression, anxiety. And then once you go and meet people physically, your neural links are made much more. So your brain cells get activated. And studies have shown that there is no age to start being physically active. So people who are not physically active in, say, 60s, 70s, or even 50s, this is still a good time. But key point I would like to re-emphasize: do not go to gym right away and start lifting weights suddenly, and you can push your organs to a limit and have a heart attack or a stroke, which
Consult
we
your
are seeing
doctor.
happening.
Consult your doctor. Do not push your limits beyond a point.
Absolutely.
Know what you're doing. Be aware of your endurance levels, especially once you've crossed a certain age, and especially if you have comorbidities such as diabetes.
Absolutely.
I think that is great advice from you, Dr. Kaul. Let me now take this to Dr. Rakesh Yadav. Dr. Yadav, you're a cardiologist. I'm sure for years now you've been telling your patients, get off that couch, go out for a walk or a jog or a run, stop taking the elevator, take the stairs instead. Why do you think Indians are not listening to experts like yourself? Why are half of Indians physically unfit, as this Lancet study says? And on a more serious note, how serious is the linkage between lack of physical fitness and heart ailments?
That is very true. I think it has been already told that physical inactivity is one of the most important cause of all the comorbidity which leads to heart attack. Diabetes, hypertension, obesity, especially truncal obesity. So everything which lead to physical because of physical inactivity is prone for cardiovascular disorder. Second important thing, why Indians are not taking physical activity in their routine. There's two important factors. First, there is always emphasis: go for the morning walk, go for the evening walk, run or jog. I always said, tell them to be physically active, whether you are active at home, you are active at your workplace. So it is not mandatory to go for morning walk for 45 minutes. If you are walking in your hospital, in your office, that is enough. If you are climbing a stairs instead of taking a lift. So I always said, do some stretching exercise. Why I always emphasize yoga? Because yoga can be done anywhere. It doesn't require outdoor activity. It doesn't require coldness, warmness. You can do at your home. So any type of physical activity which causes your muscle to contract, I always say, which causes your muscle to contract may lead to lot of improvement in your body. And why we are not accepting it? Because it is not being promoted in this country. People say our Rishi Muni used to only sit for 2 years. Why they live longer? I say no, they are not only sitting, they are doing yoga. Yoga is a form of physical activity. So,
can I ask you a follow-up question? Sorry to interrupt you, but since you are
yes.
saying any kind of physical activity is good, you don't necessarily have to go to the gym or even go for a run. What would you say to women who say, but I do a lot of household chores? There are some like Dr. Reddy who say it is a myth that household chores are enough as physical activity. You need to do more. What is your take on that?
Household work which was done 50 years back, like they are wiping this floor, they are washing the clothes. This is a physical activity. If a woman at present says, I go to kitchen and do my cooking for 12 hours of physical activity, it's not a physical activity. So you have to choose what women were doing previously. They are going for 2 kilometers to just take a bucket of water from the well. That is a physical activity. People say the wheat is being make in the home, so that they have to do a physical activity on the form of chakki. So those are physical activity. If the woman is doing that thing, that is enough. So I just say that your muscle need to contract. Whether you run, you walk, you do yoga, you do deep breathing exercise, you do gym, whatever you want to do, you have to exercise your muscle. Because if you don't exercise, it will lead to two important things. Because you don't burn the calories, you will gain the weight. Second important thing, as previously told, the fat is the most important culprit. Maximum amount of fat on your body, especially at your in the truncal obesity, is the most important cause. And what the previous speaker has told, I need not to repeat that. That all are truth. You have insulin problem, resistant problem, you have a lot of cortisol, you have a lot of stress hormone which are being released, you will become hypertensive, you become diabetic. So that is very true. So this to say that I'm working from the morning and evening and not doing any physical activity, just watching, abusing your servants, doing the monitoring of your servants, whether you are 24 hours busy, it is not a physical activity, rather it is going to give you stress, which is again a negative thing for your body.
Yes, you're quite right. The kind of household chores that people did once upon a time don't seem to exist anymore. Therefore, yes, get off that couch and do some physical activity. Ideal thing, of course, would be to get out of your house. Let me go back to Dr. Bhanot at this point. Dr. Bhanot, I want to ask you two questions. One, often a link is drawn between diabetes and obesity. Would you say that, in your experience, there have been a significant number of cases where very overweight or obese people have ended up contracting diabetes primarily on account of their weight? And also, why is it that Indian women are even worse off than Indian men? 57% to 42%, according to this Lancet study.
So I'll answer your second question first, because we were just talking about household chores. So Indian women have this tendency of prioritizing themselves at last. They don't prioritize themselves. They will not prioritize themselves even for food. They will keep their food choices as the last priority. Whatever is cooked for the family, whether it is good for their health or not, they will end up eating the same food. What is being cooked for the children, what is being cooked for the husband. I have even noticed in my practice that whatever is the leftover food of a child which needs a lot of fat or a lot of carbs is consumed by the woman, because she doesn't want to waste the food. In the preschool years of the children, whatever is left in the tiffin, the woman eats it. So obviously, she ends up gaining more weight. Now, with the household management that she's doing in the Indian kitchen or in the homes, plus she's also sometimes working, she ultimately neglects her physical activity. So between the work balance or in the house balance, she does not get time for doing any physical activity. Plus, Also, there are not many women in India who would, go out to a gym and start working out once they have, children at home and husband at home who are waiting for her attention. So women tend to do not prioritize their health. And many women have this misconception, as the doctor was saying, that if they're doing home chores, if they're cooking, if they're cleaning at home, their physical activity is done. Even walking inside the house, they just think they're done. If they walk for 4,000 steps, they're over. But that's not true. We need, as the guidelines say, at least 150 minutes of physical activity, of aerobic activity, which is actually making us happy, making us mentally more happy, not stressed. It has to be giving us some amount of happiness. That's why I feel women are more worse when it comes to physical activity. The second question, you said that definitely obesity has become the cause of the increase in type 2 diabetes. Even, why are we only talking about adults? I'm talking about even the school-going children. Due to obesity, we are seeing type 2 diabetes even in children who are like 10 years old, 12 years old, which type 2 diabetes we used to see in adults above 40. Initially, we saw that adults like the age of 30, 35 are getting. Now we are seeing it even in school children. And that is just because of lack of physical activity and poor eating habits, which leads to abdominal obesity. This is a problem. We have to understand that how insulin is working in the body. The insulin basically takes away the glucose from the blood and puts it into the cells. If the fat is increasing, this action of insulin is not done properly, because of which the body starts producing more insulin. More the insulin, more the fat deposition. We have to understand that insulin is an anabolic hormone. It stores. So more insulin production in the body because we are eating the wrong kind of food. We are eating more carbohydrates. We get a spike. We produce more insulin, more fat deposition.
Yes.
More fat deposition on the abdomen area, more requirement of insulin, right? And that ends up into more abdominal obesity. Slowly and steadily,
it's a vicious
this
cycle.
Insulin resistance. It's
Absolutely.
a cycle. And for that, we have to do physical activity and change our diet. We have to bring proteins in our diet, fiber in our diet in each meal to break this cycle.
I promise we are going to discuss in greater detail the kind of changes we need to bring to our diet. And you've raised a very important point, which we also flagged at the start of the show, that it's not just adults, an alarmingly large number of children are becoming obese and as a result contracting type 2 diabetes. How can we address these challenges? We'll continue this conversation with our panel of experts on the other side of this quick break.
For the very first time in our investigation, we unmasked the killer of Ravindra Matre.
In 5G, we have to stand with the world, and in 6G, we have to lead the world.
Winning a Grammy was an absolutely surreal experience. There are beautiful golf courses, there are well-played golf courses, there are great greens. But I think we are a combination of everything.
Now, because of the nature-friendly atmosphere here, plenty of water, you can hear the birds. So lots and lots of birds live on this golf course.
Every corner you have a different vista. You have the beautiful Sayadri range behind you and it's just endless. It keeps going on and on and on and on. So I think no matter what floor you are, you're always slapped in the face by this most amazing view that takes your breath away for a second.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
When we
talk about India, unfortunately the country has the highest burden of road crash fatalities.
तो लगभग 76% लोग pedestrians और two wheeler वाले हैं जिनकी डेथ हुई है. While the highways are getting better in India, the local roads, the city roads, the town roads, these need to be improved.
This and more. Streaming on News9 plus news is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
For the very first time in our investigation, we unmasked the killer of Ravindra Matre.
In 5G, we have to stand with the world, and in 6G, we have to lead the world.
Winning a Grammy was an absolutely surreal experience.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. We're discussing India's obesity crisis as highlighted by the latest Lancet study. Let me go back to Dr. Dheeraj Kaul in the US. Dr. Kaul, as we mentioned earlier, the data is quite telling. India has the 12th highest prevalence of insufficient physical activity among 195 countries. At least 44 million women and 26 million men above the age of 20 have been found to be obese. And as was mentioned even by Dr. Bhanot, alarm bells should be ringing for us because 12.5 million children between the ages of 5 and 19 are grossly overweight. So basically 70% of India's urban population can be classified as obese or overweight, placing the country clearly in the midst of an obesity crisis. My question to you is, how seriously should we take obesity among children, and especially the growing incidence of type 2 diabetes, which results from this, as was mentioned by Dr. Bhanot earlier?
I think that's an amazing, outstanding question. I speak on the topic of obesity-related comorbid conditions in US, and I give lectures on the topic because it's an area very close to me. I have seen a lot of suffering patients. But coming straight to the point you're talking about, in children, it's extremely alarming. You see, obesity, all of us know, is associated with diabetes, hypertension, right? You would also think of in elderly, the more weight you put, osteoarthritis, which is in the knees, is affected. But less people know that obesity is directly related to breast cancer. It's directly related to colon cancer. As a geriatrician, I've seen a lot of patients who are obese and eventually develop microstrokes and lead to multi-infarction dementia. Obesity is also associated with unknown etiology of, say, dementia. Matter of fact, it is known to exacerbate Alzheimer's dementia as well. So it's not only things which we are seeing, it has a compounding effect. And obesity leads to eventually our CKD, that means chronic kidney disease progression as well. So how the questions, like this study actually is showing a mirror to all of us in the society as physicians, as patients, as parents, like coming to the children, that what are we feeding our children? What kind of physical activities children are doing? As you know, you rightly pointed out, I have gone through the study, I don't want to go into details of the study, but as you are seeing in the study, they're talking about how physical activities has gone down by usage of smart devices as well. There are so many consensus that in children, usage of smart devices, social media, has led to an inactivity level. Before that, there was an epidemic of video games. Now that epidemic exists along with social media and smart devices. Eventually, we will have replacement with VR glasses. I'm into technology, healthcare, and AI. So VR glasses is going to be very big upcoming, already is actually. But at the same time, we have to be very cognizant how much physical activity we are doing. You see, for children, they are very sensitive to making new neural links by talking physically to people, by going in collaborative area where there are more than 3 children. There are so many studies into this, how it improves their ability to take mental stress, how it improves their ability to perform under stress, which is the current demand of the society. So what you are seeing is a tip of the iceberg. There is way beyond it many things which are touched by obesity, and there are certain medications which are actually one of the bestseller medications. If you talk about OTC, is weight loss drugs. It's a $100 billion industry right now in US. How to lose your weight, and to be honest, studies have shown if you gain weight, and I'm talking about non-diabetic people above age 40 to 45, it's one of the hardest thing to lose. Matter of fact, ability to get rid of tobacco is considered to be one of the hardest thing to get rid of. And in top 5 is excess weight. So it has to be behavior pattern. It has to be, a multi-systemic dynamic approach about diet, exercise, talking to weight loss groups. It's you have to be mentally ready that it's not going to happen right away. It's 1, 2, 3, 5 tier. You have to do at least 3 attempts, and it's totally okay to get off the grid, gain some weight back again. But there is one point I would like to say: people who are type 1 diabetic or people who are type 2 diabetic, some of them do need insulin. Insulin is not always leading to weight gain. So that should be very clearly discredited, because otherwise people will have a fear of insulin. So insulin, like I mentioned before and somebody explained, it's like a key to a door which lets the sugar go in the cell.
Right.
So the key gets jammed.
We need not fear insulin, but we certainly need to fear physical inactivity and obesity, which can lead to a lot of health complications. Before I go back to Dr. Rakesh Yadav, we also have joining us on Global Lens tonight, Ranjan Ghosh, director and owner of Gold's Gym and Fierce Fitness Academy. Ranjan Ghosh, welcome to the show. We're discussing how half of Indians are physically unfit, according to this latest Lancet study that has come out, and the doctors on the panel are not surprised at all. You are a gym owner. Tell us, I mean, is going to the gym still largely confined to being a fad, a status symbol, perhaps even something that a lot of people tend to do just for the social media, just to put up their pictures and reels on Instagram. And even if there are people out there who are truly committed to fitness, would you say that that segment is actually quite small and negligible compared to our larger population, even if we focus on the urban centers, the big cities like Delhi for a moment?
Right. To a certain extent, it is very true that there are certain age group who goes to the gym, particularly to take the selfies and videos. But then there are a certain population who are aware about the fitness. Now, if we bifurcate in that population who are aware about the fitness, there are 2 types who are, after they are aware, they do the workout, and second, they make certain excuses not to do the workout. So just taking a look at the housewives, so they generally will tell that all of us, we do our daily work, household works we already do, so why we should go to the gym? So that's an excuse actually. So household activities doesn't burns that kind of calories which actually a person should burn, and that kind of physical fitness, the physical activity is what a person should do. So not only in the gym, if a person wants to be fit, there are many other varieties, many other different ways apart from going to the gym as well. If a person actually knows, then for example, even in the nutrition part, if a household lady is preparing a chapati, so that chapati can be prepared from a wheat or any other millets as well. So in the same time frame, that activity can be done. So on the nutrition part can be also taken care of. On an average, 30 minutes a day, a brisk walk or certain yoga activities in the home can also help a
Okay.
help largely to a household or even or any other persons as well. So not necessarily a person has to go to the gym, but he has to follow the advice of the correct people. What nutrition that person has to take, correct nutrition that person has to take, or what kind of a physical activity he can perform from his own house, from the comfort of his own house as well.
Wonderful. That's music to my ears, Ranjan.
Yeah.
I'm a lazy person, and when you say that even 30 minutes of some sort of exercise at home is good enough, that's very reassuring for me. I feel better about myself. Though, I also feel that a study like this may actually be good for your business, because a lot of Indians will probably read the study and be jolted into perhaps joining the neighborhood gym. But Dr. Yadav, I think we can all agree that while things have become worse for adults since the COVID pandemic because of the work from home phenomena, for kids, as was mentioned by Dr. Kaul, it is smart devices and the obsession with social media, something that even parents can't seem to do much about. Now, if that is really the new reality that we have to live with in today's digital era, what would your advice to parents and their children be?
Now, you have said that it is bad for children. It is worst for children. The COVID pandemic and the use of AI, gadgets, smartphones, smart devices is worst for your kid. Two important things. When you go outside, you socialize. When you do the outdoor activity, you have a social input in your body. You meet people, you become more social. When you are only based on a smart device, you become unsocial. And this unsocial make you lot of wrong thing in your lifestyle. The child who is just sitting on computer, playing with AI, drinks more coke, takes more junk food, is more stressful, more abusive. He just listen very less to the parents. The child who goes outside to play a football, he has a different attitude. So that the study has proven that what if the child become inactive at home and the child become active, it is not only the BMI which decreases, not only the obesity, there are a lot of mental problems which you can avoid. Second important thing, people always think it's not with the children, with the adult. How to lose weight? People say, I will go to gym and I will lose weight. Absolutely wrong. You have to calculate your calories. Mind it, from a very mild activity to intense activity, you just have a caloric difference of 600 calories per day. And you want to lose 1 kg weight, you have to lose your 7,700 calories. So by losing your 7,700 calories, you lose 1 kg weight. If you go to gym, you don't restrict your diet, you are not going to lose the weight. Second important thing, you have to teach even a child what is healthy obesity. If your muscle mass is more, your fat is less, your BMI is more than is 25, you are not obese. Third important thing for Indian, it is not 25 which has taken as an obesity. I always say your BMI should range from 90 to 23.5. The Asian Indian beyond 23.5 should be taken as an obesity. That is very, very important message given to all India. Don't follow the Western guideline. And the most important thing for child, whatever you are in pear-shaped body or an apple-shaped body. Believe me, apple-shaped body is worse than a pear-shaped body. So you have to teach your child also. So the children should be taught from very beginning the concept of healthy lifestyle. What people say, till age of 40, enjoy your life, and after 40, I will restrict all my diet. Absolutely a wrong concept. Your diet should come from your children. I always say
it has to start early. I think that's great advice, Dr. Yadav. You don't think you can join the gym tomorrow morning and lose weight? Count your calories. While of course we encourage everyone to engage in physical activity, but if we are talking about weight loss, count your calories. Very quickly, Dr. Bhanot, I'm running out of time. How important is physical exercise for mental health? And also, very briefly, if you could tell us, what kind of dietary changes does an average Indian person who might be overweight need to make?
See, anybody who's going for a regular physical activity or going to gym, if you ask that person is addicted to the physical activity. Why am I using the word addicted? Because when we do physical activity, we get these feel-good hormones rushing through our body, right? And that hormones are very, very good for our mental health. As the speakers before also have said, that socializing also helps when we are going out for doing physical activity. We socialize also. So physical activity gives us a lot of mental health benefits, coming out of depression, coming out of loneliness. It really, really helps. And if with physical activity, we are also doing certain deep breathing exercises, it will also help us balance hormones. So physical activity, aerobic activity, along with some strength training activities, muscle training activities, along with some breathing activities together as a combination will really, really help people.
Okay.
Now, very quickly, if you ask me about the dietary patterns that we should follow, as Indians, we have to remember that the latest guidelines have told us that as we thought that we're eating less protein, we are not. We are not eating less protein, but the kind of protein we are eating is not very good quality. So we have to make sure that each meal has protein, has good quality protein, which is assimilated in our body in a very good manner, which comes from milk, which comes from non-veg, which comes from eggs, which comes from tofu, soya. All these are good
What
sources
about all
of
those
protein.
fad diets that tell you to go off carbs?
No, that's not needed. That's not needed. We need carbohydrates in our diet, right? We need complex carbohydrates in our diet. Fruits we need grains which are whole. We need pulses which are whole pulses. These are also sources of carbohydrates. So we do not need to remove carbohydrates in our diet. We need a balanced diet.
It's about a balance.
Yes, we need a balance.
Okay, I think that's great advice. We need to have a balanced diet. We need to, put more thought into what we are putting into our bodies. And I think what you said there about mental health is also very important. If you are battling depression, loneliness, anxiety, well, then physical activity is as important for you as it is for somebody who might be overweight or for any person for that matter. I'm completely out of time. On that note, Dr. Shraddha Bhanot, Dr. Rakesh Yadav, Dr. Dheeraj Kaul, Ranjan Ghosh, it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Great to have all of you on Global Lens tonight. Thank you so much. All right, let's now get you some other news from the other parts of the world, starting with Kenya. Kenya's president has announced today that he will withdraw the planned tax rises, bowing to pressure from protesters who had on Tuesday stormed the parliament, launched demonstrations across the country and threatened more action this week. President William Ruto stated he would not sign a finance bill including the hikes a day after violent clashes between police and the protesters at the assembly and nationwide left at least 23 people dead and scores of others wounded. In a televised address, the Prime Minister said, the President said, listening keenly to the people of Kenya who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this finance bill, I concede and therefore I will not sign the 2024 finance bill. It shall subsequently be withdrawn. President Ruto also announced he would initiate a dialogue with Kenyan youth and implement austerity measures, starting with cuts to the presidential budget to address the country's financial challenges. This move is seen as a significant victory for a week-old protest movement that escalated from online opposition to tax hikes into mass rallies demanding a political overhaul, marking the most serious crisis of the president's two-year term in office.
To the people of Kenya, who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 Finance Bill, and it shall subsequently be withdrawn, and I have agreed with these members that becomes our collective position. The country witnessed widespread expression of dissatisfaction with the bill as passed, regrettably resulting in the loss of life, destruction of property, and desecration of constitutional institutions. On my own behalf, and on behalf of these members and many other Kenyans, I send my condolences to the families of those who lost their loved ones in this very unfortunate manner.
Let's now get you the latest on the high-profile case of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. The WikiLeaks founder is a free man at long last. Julian Assange landed back home in Australia today after a plea deal that allowed him to walk free from a London prison. There were emotional scenes at the Canberra airport as Assange kissed his wife and hugged his father. For the past 14 years, Assange was in a legal battle with US officials who accused him of leaking classified documents which they say put lives in danger. The plea deal saw him plead guilty to one charge of conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence information rather than the 18 charges that he originally faced. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who has been instrumental in securing Assange's release, today said he's very pleased that the case is over, adding that the WikiLeaks founder has been through a considerable ordeal. Assange spent the last 5 years behind bars at London's high-security Belmarsh prison, fighting US attempts to extradite him to face charges over the document leaks.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange walked free on Wednesday from a court on the US territory of Saipan after pleading guilty to violating US espionage law. It ends a years-long battle to avoid prison in the United States. After his hearing, he left without answering questions to the media. He waved as he got into a white SUV, which took him to a private jet waiting to fly him to Australia. In the 3-hour hearing, Assange pleaded guilty to a count of conspiring to obtain and disclose classified national defense documents. His media group released the largest leak in US military history in 2010. Tens of thousands of classified military files detailing the US war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and thousands of diplomatic cables. Assange told the court, quote, "Working as a journalist, I encouraged my source to provide information that was said to be classified in order to publish that information, and that I believed the First Amendment protected that activity, but I accept that it was a violation of the espionage statute." Washington has said the release of the secret documents put lives in danger. On Wednesday, Chief U.S. District Judge Ramona V. Manglona accepted his guilty plea and released him due to time already served in a British jail. One of Assange's lawyers, Barry Pollock, spoke after the hearing.
We firmly believe that Mr. Assange never should have been charged under the Espionage Act. It is appropriate for the judge, as she did today, to determine that no additional incarceration of Mr. Assange would be fair, would be appropriate, and it is time for him to be reunited with his family.
Assange had spent over 5 years in one of Britain's toughest prisons, battling extradition to the US, and prior to that, 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, as he fought sex crimes accusations in Sweden. While in the Ecuadorian embassy, Assange had 2 sons with his partner Stella, who had been one of his lawyers. The Australian government has been calling for Julian Assange's release, with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese telling the Australian Parliament Wednesday his case had dragged on for too long.
As the brutal Israel-Hamas war rages on in the Gaza Strip, at the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, scores of children are waiting to be transferred out of the beleaguered enclave to receive medical treatment for cancer and other illnesses. The World Health Organization has not been able to carry out medical evacuations from Gaza since the closure of the Rafah crossing in early May. Here's a report on how these children and their families are fighting a daily battle for survival, not just because of the threat of bombs and missiles, but also because their deteriorating health condition means the clock is ticking and every minute of delay in their treatment can make the difference between life and death.
Nada Al-Kanu sits with her 2 young children in Khan Yunis' Nasser Hospital in the southern part of the Gaza Strip on Monday. Her son Amjad is suffering from malnutrition and Ahmed has testicular cancer. Originally from the north, Al-Kanu says she has been trying to facilitate medical evacuation for some time now and recently received a call telling her a transfer would go ahead. I didn't believe it, she says about the call. I said, this is impossible. The Rafah crossing is closed and under siege. How can we get out? The World Health Organization has been unable to carry out medical evacuations from Gaza since the closure of the Rafah crossing in early May. Through coordination with the WHO, the 2 boys are to be transferred out of Gaza for medical treatment through the Kerem Shalom crossing. Dr. Ahmad Al-Farah told Reuters that nearly 50,000 patients were in need of transfer.
Some of them malignant diseases, cancer, some of them metabolic diseases, some of them immune deficiency diseases, and of course, some of them injured by the explosive injury that they got in the war.
Another Palestinian mother, Samira, has been told her daughter Jory will also be transferred out. Jory had to stop chemotherapy when the war began, and now is one of many thousands who suffer from malnutrition.
It's the most difficult of situations to not be able to provide the necessary nutrition for a child. There's no food for her body, only canned food. There's no fruit to give her or vegetables to get for her, and if there is, it's all unimaginably expensive. So thank God that she will be able to travel to get medical treatment and eat more food than we have here.
A group of UN-led agencies estimates that around 7% of Gazan children may be acutely malnourished, compared with 0.8% before the Israel-Hamas conflict began on October 7th. Israel's offensive has killed more than 37,400 people in the Hamas-ruled Palestinian territory, according to health authorities there. It launched its assault after Hamas fighters stormed across the border into southern Israel on October 7th, killing around 1,200 people and taking more than 250 people hostage, according to Israeli tallies.
All right, that's a wrap on Global Lens. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us at the same time tomorrow.
The confidence is certainly back in the market.
Do tighten your seat belt so that you can withstand volatility. I have one humble request to all the viewers of News9.